So what we're gonna do next is we want to create the timeline activity. Okay, so timeline activity is kind of gonna be, you know, the one that the user is probably looking at the most of, right? So it's gonna be the one that shows the entire what people are doing. So it's gonna look like a list of various, you know, things that our friends are doing, right? So timeline activity, so that's where it fits on the picture, right? So that's our timeline activity. It's a separate activity, and it's gonna read the data from the database. Make sense? That's our goal with that. So let's start slow. We're gonna do this again organically, one step at a time. Always keeping it whole and complete, and organically growing it and integrating it back into the mothership. This is the mothership, right? The whole thing. So, what do I do? Yeah. So we're gonna create. Sure. Let's start. We're gonna create a new layout, and then we're gonna create a new activity for it, right? Okay. So how do I create a new layout? Yeah. File, new. Android XML. Cool, you guys are picking it up. So file, I'll call it, since I called the other layout status, I'm going to call this one timeline XML. It's a layout, and that's it. So all I have to do again is just enter timeline XML and make sure it's a layout. So far so good? Bam, and it gives you that file. Right. Now I could go and create the UI for this file and all that, but remember we define a bunch of styles. So if I click on my layout, one of the first things I would do is I would say that the style of this layout is the style that we already defined, which was under styles activity. Woohoo! Right? And as a matter of fact, I can remove almost all of the other properties. Right? I did. So the only property that my mother of all only component on this timeline activity so far has is a reference to a style. That's it. I even removed the default, all the other default stuff. Whenever you're missing a window, go to Window, Show View, Other, and then find this.
Where is the properties window under which one?
General. But if you're not sure, you can just start typing. Look. You know, prop. There you go. Right? So you don't really need to be searching. You can just start typing. Yeah, so I selected my component, right? And it tells me here that it is really looking at linear layout, right? And then I go here, ... Now you guys, if you're on Ubuntu, ... doesn't work. Are you on Ubuntu?
Yeah,
well, do you have the style? Did you guys create the style? I mean, unless you created it, you're not going to have it. Okay, let me take a look. So just a refresher. So what I defined in styles was the all this stuff, right? So my activity, the style that I'm currently applying, knows about the background, knows about the orientation, knows about layout width, layout height. So if you guys don't have style, you can go manually and do that to your thing if you choose to, right? So that's that. I'm gonna make it team light like this. Okay, it's a nice birdie. So we now have just one element here. the layout, right? The mother of everything. So let's look at this hypothetical layout. What do you see, kind of like a big scheme of things? What do you see here as components? Yeah, so we call this guy a title, right? So we see a title, and we see the dump of the data, right? Okay. So I said we're gonna do this organically, so we're gonna do this one step at a time. So for now we just have two components, and I'll make them both be text view. So I'm gonna have one text view which is gonna be a title, and then I'm gonna have another text view which is gonna take all the available space, right? So it takes all the available space, and we're gonna dump data in that, like as a just a text out, right? No, I mean we're gonna get to that later on, but for now we're just gonna print it out, like, or one step at a time. So two text views. So you can just go here, find two text views, text. Where is the text view? No, edit text is editable text. But
Text view, yeah.
am I blind? So, oh, this is layouts. My bad. So this is different. Yeah, this is organized differences. So these are layouts, and then the quote unquote widgets are here. All right, dump one, dump two. Bam, bam. I have two text views, one below each other. Okay. So the first one is easy because I already know what it's going to look like. I have a style for it called title. So I'm just going to go, and again, I'm just going to find a property called style, and I'm going to say the top one is going to be style, where's style, dot dot dot, pick my style that I already defined for title. Bam. Okay. And I can now actually remove everything else because everything else is just well, except this one is overpowering it, right? So if you have something defined locally, like for example these properties, they overpower whatever you have defined in style, just like in a cascading style sheet, right? Whatever is defined closer to home overpowers the other guy, right? So the only one that I need to have is style and text. I don't actually need ID because are we programmatically caring about this one? No. Gone. Okay. So it's style and text. Where's the text? FST. Okay, text. So what's going to be the text for this? Well, we need to define it, right? So just like we've done, I'll tell you how many times so far. So just like we've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, almost 24 times. Okay, so don't say that there wasn't any repetition. We add yet another piece of text, title, timeline, bam, oops, title timeline already exists. I already have title timeline. Oh, I did because I was demoing something and I created it. No big deal. There's my timeline. Okay, so the first guy, super simple, text view with two and only two properties set. Everything else comes from the style. How wide, how tall, what the gravity we use, etc. So that ensures consistency with the other activities we have, right?
You said we
Can
don't
you show me
even.
the XML for your style again? I didn't have a style, so I just want to quickly manually do it.
So okay, sure. So the style for this one, for the title, was I defined the size to be, again, the two things that matter are layout width and height,
Oh,
right? But then I, cosmetically I added text size to be 30 dp and center gravity
and
to be
layout
center.
height was what? Lab parent?
Yeah, wrap content. Fill parent to wrap content. So height, I want to take as much height just to wrap my own text, no more. right? That's why it's relatively generous. It only takes as much as it needs for its own text. If it had a larger text, it would take more, but it's not going to take everything. Whereas the other guy below, it's going to take everything, right?
That would be similar to edit box system, right? But
What is the dimension?
DP, which is density independent pixel. Sorry, you were saying?
I think the next guy you can also use edit box style or what we created last time.
Yeah, edit. So the second guy should be taking all the available space, right? So I can try to use the one. It's not really perfect, but let's see what we get if I change it to that style. So style, I'll say edit style edit box.
You're not changing the linear layout so we can stack vertically instead of horizontally.
I thought I changed the linear layout.
Mine is stacking.
But doesn't my orientation say vertical? So, but you're right. I mean, something is off here. Oh, these are these are overpowering. That's what's off. There, bam, fixed. Yeah, no, I did specify as part of my style that activity has vertical orientation. Yes, and then you just got to make sure that you remove it from here, because whatever else you define here, it's going to overpower whatever you define in the style. Okay, so this guy looks good, and so far the only thing I have is style. I'm going to get rid of text, so style. And what other property am I going to need for the second guy? Do we care about it programmatically?
Yeah.
Right, so we need ID. Remember, you guys, like, yes, we define all this, but remember I said when we talk, yes, you have zillion and one property to worry about, but I said these are the important ones, and the ones that are in bold are the only ones that are universally important, right? So you may care about text, ID, gravity, and weight, or not, right? But you're gonna care about width and height, right? I should have added background possibly in here, questionable. So back to this. So yes, I need to specify the ID because we care about it programmatically. So we already have an ID. It's a meaningless text view 02. So I'm gonna rename it to something more meaningful. Text statuses. Okay, so if you want to see my XML, because it's hard to see what all the properties in this kind of view, right? If you want to see my XML, I'm going to switch over to XML. I'm Control Shift F to reformat it, and boom, there it is.
Just leave that XML.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
But it could not be simpler. Actually, it could.
But that's not helping because I don't have a style.
Yeah, if you don't have a style sheet, then yeah, you gotta kind of reproduce the work that I did on the style sheet. But that's why the style sheet is on a USB key, so feel free to grab it. Okay, so sounds like most of you have similar types of problems. So if I didn't have style sheets, I do, because we already covered all this on Monday, Tuesday. But if I didn't have style sheets, right, the key was to if you want to create a structure like this, first of all, what's holding this structure? So what's the mother of all? It's this linear layout, yes. And what's universally important? Layout width, layout height. So to make it maximum, to take all the space, you say fill parent, right? Take all the space, be greedy, fill parent, right? That's the first thing. Second thing, you want linear layout to arrange its kids up and down, right? So kid number 1 kid number 2, right? So that means that it's up-down orientation, i.e. vertical, as opposed to default one, which is horizontal. So those are the first two things to. So set up layout width and height. Always start with layout width and height. That's kind of like cheat sheet. Always start with these guys. Fix that first and foremost, and start with the top dog, the mother of all, right? So once you got that, then select the second one, width and height. So in this case, width is field parent, height is rep content, and then this is second case. This one is field parent, field parent, field parent for both, right? Now, if this one has no text and it's rep content, if you're wrapping content of nothing, how much space does it have? 0 by 0. So it's going to be hell of a hard to click on something that's 0 by 0 pixels. It's going to take you an entire day to find that pixel. Okay, so that's why we keep, or at least I usually keep outline open so that I can find it here and select it, if indeed it was set to 0 by 0. So those are the common pitfalls with this. But this should have been old news for the most part, the layout, right? So does everyone have it more or less like this? Right? Now the only other important, I don't care about, because you guys take care of your own cosmetic stuff, right? The only important thing for me now, moving on to Java, is that this guy, the second text view, the one that we're going to be outputting text to, has a ID. So do you guys, have you actually implicitly put an ID on that guy? Something like ID text statuses, for example. That's one ID. So select that guy, give it some ID, something that is meaningful for you. It doesn't have to be my naming convention, but it needs to be just something that makes sense to you, so you can later on find it. Because by now we have about 2 dozen, no more, at least 3 dozen IDs, right? You want to see how many IDs we have, just for fun? Remember, I said never look at our file again, but sure, let's make an exception, just for fun to see. Oh, we don't have that many. Well, these are just IDs, right? But then, in terms of, these are all the various strings that we have, various styles, various things. So you can see how this file can explode really quickly, right? So that's why I like to keep it all somewhat consistent, naming-wise. So, everyone good so far? You have a style, happy with it? Yeah? Okay. Alright, so what's the next step to do? We're still creating a timeline activity. What's the next step? Create a Java class. Right. So just like before, select your package, right click, and then new, and then class. Right? Package, right click, new class. Bam. And then just like before, we give it a name, timeline activity. So this is the same as what we did for preference activity and status activity, yes? Bam. That creates a new Java file for you. Right? And then what do we do?
Extends activity.
Exactly. So whenever you're creating something new in Android, you usually start by extending, subclassing something from the system. Extends activity, Control-Shift-O to organize imports. And then, what is the one method that I said it's almost always universally present in activities? On create, right? So we're gonna go source, override implement methods, find on create. If you don't wanna, I mean, you can type it if you like typing, right? If that's your thing, it's not mine. So that's why I prefer to use the tool, right? So there's the on create. And do you guys remember that infamous line 11 that I talked about when we did Hello World? Yeah, set content view. Remember I said there's the line that does all the heavyweight lifting? It was always the line 11, right? So you can control space, set content view, and then r dot, you wait, layout, dot, you wait, there's my timeline, okay? So this is important, this double check that I actually saved my timeline. I know the timeline is now known and so forth. So in other words, do not type these. Typing leads to typos. Okay, you don't want to type them. Boom. So now we have, but this what we have right now, right here, is exactly the same as your hello world, right? It's just that hello world we got it from a template, and yes, we had to type a little bit here, or do a lot of completion. But this is exactly the same as hello world. Even the line numbers are exactly the same, right? So that's fine for now, right? So we have our timeline, doesn't do much, but it should inflate a proper resource, right? Because, oops, don't do that. Because this now refers to that, which is this file here, which we just spent some time designing, right? So, what do we do with yeah, so what's next? Okay, so the manifest file. So whenever we define one of the main building blocks, we go and we define it in the manifest file. So just like you did a preference activity, as a matter of fact, copy paste that, bam, and then just change prefs activity to timeline activity. Done. Save it. Right? Okay, now I can't really see it because if I run it, nothing's going to happen. So what can I do to now show my timeline activity? Right. So now that we have it, keep in mind we're doing small chunks of code at a time, and we're constantly integrating it back into the mothership. Right. Yamba is our mothership. So we now have this activity. Presumably, it's going to look like this. In other words, it's going to look great. But we need to somehow fire it up, right? And I could, what we did before is remember this mumbo jumbo, which we don't know much about, was what was determining which activity to start. That's what made status activity somewhat special, right? So if I wanted to I could copy now this into timeline activity, or what I can do is I can add a menu button to start a timeline activity, right? So I'm gonna add a menu button in this case. So I'm gonna go to to status activity. No, I'm gonna go to, yeah, let's do it that way. So we're gonna do menu first, right? Add another item, just like we've done it 4 times so far. So item timeline, title timeline, so title timeline somewhere, there it is. And then icon, that's the hard part, right? Finding the icon. And the one that I found before was, yeah, I used this one before. I see menu, sort by size. But it's up to you, right? It's just go crazy with icons. Okay, so at Android, let me do it, drawable / IC menu sort by size. That's some system built icon underscore. Yeah, it's all underscores. Yeah. Did you get it?
Didn't you try the timeline activity that Java class is classic?
Yeah, but you can also look at your hello world. It's going to be the same. Nothing exciting.
Set content field to timeline.
Yeah. That just basically says what to load as the default layout. Yeah. Again, it's just like your hello world.
Where are you looking for icons?
Well, remember all the icons, all the system icons are in your SDK, and then specific platforms such as Platform 8, and then in Data RES folder, right? Hold on. Data RES folder, and then you can look at all the resources, right? So you can look at it there. It's on your file system in that folder. I also have this website that I go to that just has a dump of all those icons on a website. Android Drawable Explorer.appspot.com.
So, can you go back to that menu.xml?
Menu.xml, sure.
And
Again, this is the item we just added, and it's exactly the same like four other items that we added in the last couple of days.
You created in a submenu by mistake and there's an up button, but that doesn't seem to work at least here.
Right, so the order of these determines the order. So for example, if I want a timeline to show up at the beginning, I can like move this up. Right, so now I have timeline first, preferences second, start, stop, service, and purge last. Something like that. Are you saying the up and down doesn't work? Yeah, it does.
No, I created it by mistake as a sub item and I'm trying to move it out.
Yeah. Well, you may have to then do it in XML.
Yeah.
So when you're gonna run into, as I said, this tool is just so-so.
You can't edit this in this view, right? You have to, let's say you want to go and change the title. You can't really do it. You know,
Change the what?
Let's say you want to go and change the title that you need or something, some string to it. You can't really edit it.
Well, this is just saying for title, go see strings. So if you want to change it, go see strings.
When the XML will change.
Yeah, so you would go see your strings XML, and then you would find the title there and change it. So all my titles are here, for example. So that's my titles, various titles, and so on and so on. So if I run this, I should now see the button, but it doesn't do anything, right? Menu, and there's timeline, right? And I click on it, and nothing happens. So what do we do to program what the button does? Right. So status activity, we need to go where we manage what happens, and that's inside of the on options item selected, right? And we provide the logic for the button. Case r.id.item timeline, and then do something and break, right? And that something is going to be the same as what we did in preference, right? Which is start activity, right? So just copy paste what you did in preference and change prefs activity to timeline activity, and you're done. You test it then by running it. Okay. And there it is, and voila, that starts our timeline. Woohoo! Not much there, but it's integrated into this. Now we can go back to timeline.java and work timeline activity Java and work on it. The source code for This one, yeah. But again, it's going to be the same as preference. So we haven't really done anything new, right?
What was the picture called again? The new one that you put?
Oh, the menu item was IC menu stored by size. Okay, so what are we gonna do next? What's our next step? So we have a blank activity. It looks pretty good. It shows up when you launch it. What's the next step?
Put in some kind of a adapter or something inside the text area where it's maybe like a table of some sort.
Okay, so we want to put some text in here in general, right?
I don't know if there's a table equivalent or something.
Yeah, well, we're gonna do this in stages. The first stage is gonna be really simple. We're just gonna dump text in here, right? The second stage, we're gonna take it a notch further and so forth and do a list. So for now, we're just gonna print the list right here in this text box, okay? So to do that, we need to do what in here? We need to define the text box and find it, right? Right? It's going to be a text where we're going to print stuff out. So this is going to be a text view, just like we did before. So for edit text, so text view, text status is organize imports to import it, and then after we load the XML layout, we're going to do text status is text view, and then the find view by ID r dot ID dot, and then gotta find the text statuses. There it is. Don't type, find it, right? So now I have a field to which I can print some stuff out, some data.
So you're getting something from there?
What do you mean?
The last time we did this was, you're getting it, or you're just getting a handle to that?
Right. So remember we did that in status activity as well.
Yeah.
Same thing. You
That was
you
it.
defined these two guys, right?
Right.
And then we said find view by ID
Okay.
after we inflated the layout. So just like here, so we said basically this inflates the layout into the Java memory space. Now you need to find it, and that's what this does. Text statuses does find view by ID. So now that we have it, we can print some stuff to it, right? So for now, let's just, if I was going to do something very simple, such as print out the data, what would I do? So I'll put some comments here. I'll say, setup UI, right? But now, if I was going to print the data, so get the data, output it. What would be my steps? How would I get the data and how would I output it? Get the data from the database. But remember, in the previous section, we refactored it into status data because we don't want to anyone else to know about the database particulars, right?
Get a link
Like
to
it.
No, I was just gonna say get a link to the application, right?
Okay.
Get into status data.
Okay, so I can define that Yamba application Yamba, right? So, like you said, I'm gonna get a reference to it. So Yamba Yamba is Yamba application, and then get application. Bam. That's that. Sure. So now I have access to Yamba, and and through that I have access to the status data. So next, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go to status data and make it know about the database and getting the data from the database, right? I guess so far so good. I mean, I haven't done really not anything new. Like this is all old stuff, right? Get the reference to Yamba application. Fine, we've done this 4 times so far. You know, look up your UI after you inflated it. We've done this, you know, since Hello World every single time, right? So now we're gonna get the data from the database. And to do that, I'm going to go to the status data, and just like we do insert and delete, I'm going to create another one. I'm going to call it query. So I'm going to create a new public method. I'll call it query. I'll explain why later. But you can call it anything. You can call it Mickey for that matter. But the question is, what does it return? What does it return? Strings array, is that? I mean, it could. I mean, you can return different things. Let's content. You could return content value array or something like that. Let me, for now, I'll put void temporarily. Okay. So let's see. How do we get the data? Well, guess what? We're gonna have to do the same stuff. Open the database, so you can copy paste that stuff. Close the database. Copy paste that stuff. Right. Format. And now we can say, you know, get the data, get the data. The question is, how do we get the data? Well, I don't know, db dot, and let's see what we have that makes sense here. Aha, look, there's something called db query. Okay?
Yeah, querying, so why should we have it idle?
That's a great point. Why should we have it writable? So dot get readable database. Thank you, that's a good point. Okay, so db dot query. So you guys ready for this one? This one is a long one. It's very long. All right, boom. Look. Phew. It's very long, right? Zillion parameters that we need to provide. So
There's like 4 signatures. How did you just
I picked the first one, yeah, because it's got the least. So let's imagine. Let's forget that for a second. How would you do? How would you do a query in SQL? Like when you're in SQL, how do you do a query? Select star from status is semicolon, right? So something like that. So in other words, it'd be something like this: select star from statuses, and then you can also have where something equals something like ID equals 47, having you know, something group by something, order by something. This is how this is what the full-on SQL select statement would look like, right? So let's say now in terms of this quote-unquote prepared statement. So the table is going to be the first part. So this is going to be easy because we already have the variable for table, right? Yeah, db helper dot table, right? Now columns is going to be this. So basically this is this, right? Right? Now columns is, yeah, it's this. What columns you want? So if you want all of the columns, you simply say null. If you want specific ones, then you would spell them out as an array of strings. But we're not, right? We're going to say null. Okay? So far so good? Selection and selection arguments is basically the where part, where this would be the left side, this would be the right side of the where clause, right? But since we don't really have anything here, this is we're gonna, you know, not be limiting. We just want all, right? Similarly, I'm just gonna make this null and null.
What is selection? from where till where?
It's where blah is true, and then this part of blah is this, and then this part of blah is that.
Some kind of condition.
Yeah.
Value.
Yeah, and this is the left side of the condition, this is the right side of the condition. So ID 47, and so on and so on. Yeah. But since we're not using it, we're gonna basically delete it from here, and then here this becomes null and null. Hold on. Right? Do you guys know what group having is? No? Okay, let's not use it then. Make that null as well. Do you know what group by is? No? Okay, let's get rid of that too, so make it null. Right? Order by, we can use order by. So, yeah, created that, right? But descending, right? So we want to do db helper dot, sorry, not db helper, but it's c underscore just create that, right? So I can remove that. Plus, I'm gonna add space descending. Make sure it's a space because we are concatenating these two strings, right? Make sense? Descending, because I want it. I want the latest first, not the youngest first.
You
Right.
just pass and descend, wouldn't that work? Without the C created out?
But it needs to know which column to descend on,
That's true.
right? It may work just because they happen to have, it would probably default to ID or something like that, but that's, yeah, but,
The primary key.
yeah, but that's, we're not sure. So this is equivalent of saying order by yamba created at descending. So this statement is equivalent to this function, right? Something like that, right? Now, what does DB query return? It returns something called cursor. So let me talk about explain cursor. So basically, what cursor is a pointer to a particular record in potentially large data set. So as opposed to, so imagine that my query returns 10,000 records or 10 million records. You probably don't want to deal with arrays because that would mean that you have to allocate an array of 10 million records, right? Cursor is much better because it's just a pointer to a first one, and then you can iterate over it by saying, give me the next one, give me the next one, give me the next one, right? Make sense? So, so we're going to define that thing called cursor, or we can just return. We can just return that. It doesn't. Well, actually, I can't return. I gotta define it. Cursor C is going to be that, right? And then I'm just going to return C, right? So I'm going to return that cursor.
You gotta change it to public cursor query.
Yes.
You're hiding all the SQL like.
Yes, but that's a good point. So why would we want to? Let's take a look at cursor.
Then read it back
I'm
in
going to database.
the view.
Hold on. Well,
From SQL.
yes, it's so cursor is being used by the database, but it's also going to be something that we're going to use later on for yeah. Yeah, so it's supported by multiple different cursors. So it does live in a database package, but it doesn't have to come from a database. It can actually come from a content provider and so forth. So content providers actually use the same thing. So it is yes. So
It says it isolates the test code from real cursor implementation.
what was that?
So if you go to mouse around the cursor, it says it's a mock cursor class, and it isolates the implementation from the real cursor. Isolates the code from the real cursor implementation.
What is it? So the mock cursor class, a mock cursor class that is isolates the test code from real cursor
So
implementation.
what we're using right now is a mock cursor class, is it?
No, we're using a real cursor class. We could be returning back an array if we wanted to. So we could then we could take the cursor and convert it to the array of stuff that it returns. But that may not work if we have a lot of records. So it may not be the best approach.
Think of the cursor as just an interface, and they did some preliminary implementation, but it's not fully usable.
Yeah.
And then in the list they showed above, they implemented specific one for different type of things, one for SQL. And so when they return, even though they're returning an SQL cursor, because it's derived or inherited from cursor, you can still return cursor and get all the benefit of not pulling the entire filling a big array. Only when you hit the record you want, then it would go fetch it or whatever it would do, cache it again or whatever.
Right. So yeah, so that's basically what. Yeah, so we're gonna use that cursor for now, and then we'll see how that pans out. But that's the easiest. So we're just gonna return the cursor. Now the implementation of cursor, like you said, may change. So it may be that currently it's gonna be implemented by SQLite, but then later on we'll worry about somebody else to implement it. Technically, it should not be living in a database package. That's the only confusing thing, because it's really doesn't necessarily have to do anything with the database. It's a data structure. So basically, cursor just points to that beginning of some table. So one way to think about that is if I look at it like this. So this is my various data. Right? So if this is all the data that I get, then cursor would point to the beginning, right? So this would be one record in a cursor. This would be another. Oops. This would be another record in a cursor. This would be a third record in a cursor, and so on. It keeps on going, right? But then each record has its own columns and so on, right? Does that make sense? So back to this. So now that we have this working, so this should return the cursor. So now we can go back to timeline activity, and to get the data can simply be, I'm going to define cursor as well here globally. So cursor C. I should probably call it cursor. Oops. Organize imports. And then I can get the data now by saying cursor is going to be dot status data dot query, right? So this one becomes really manageable. It's a single little one-liner, right? It opens up the database, gets the data, returns it. So far so good? So what we could do now is we now want to print out all the data. We want to output all the data, right? So what we're going to do is to output that, we're going to iterate over this cursor. So cursor is an iterator, right? So it starts at the beginning and it keeps on going until there's no more, right? So it goes like this: while cursor move to next, right? So this is gonna position cursor initially the first record, so it's not gonna pass the first record. So initially positions it at the first record. When there's no more records, it's gonna simply return false. So that's how we terminate this execution, right? And so that's basically our cursor move to next. And now we basically have cursor pointing to one record at a time, right? That's how we iterate over the entire record set, right? So we're basically going one record, second record, third record, fourth record, and so on, right?
But you will lose the first record.
And so move to next actually positions it initially to the first one. Yeah. So that's fine. So what I want to do now is I want to get those two the username and the user and the text, right, and then print it out. So I'm going to define two strings here. So string user comma text, right, and then user is going to be something, and then text is going to be something, right? Oops. The question is what, right? So what is user going to be? So I now have cursor pointing to a specific record. Now I need to get a specific column from that cursor, right? So cursor is basically moving like this. It's pointing right here. Now I want the column number 0, 1, 2, right? And then in 2 and 3, right? So I could do something like this. Cursor dot get string column index 2. Okay, and then cursor get string column index 3. Right? So this would get me user and text.
But you're hard coding the numbers.
Exactly. I'm hard coding the numbers here, which is not good, right?
It's not
Because
scalable.
if the schema changes.
Yeah, if the schema changes, that's not going to be good. So the better approach would be to define.
I think we
Get column
may want to
index,
get it by
given the
string.
I'm sorry. Yeah, so I could define something like final int and then user index column index.
What is the keyword
Huh?
What is the keyword final?
Final makes it can't change. Once it's set, it's set.
It's like a hash defined constant.
I-
C we do like hash defined.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So actually, let me just do it like this: user column index. Okay, so I'll create another like a column. So I can do cursor dot get column index of the column name, which we now have defined in status data dot column user, right? So this is gonna get that index, right? And I can say final int text column index cursor dot get column index, and then status data dot column text, right? So basically what I'm doing is I'm using the constants that we have for names to convert the names to the actual column indices, right? So it's going to be 2 here, and this is going to be 3 here, right? Something like that. So now I can, as opposed to hard coding it, I can do something like this. Does it make sense? And now that we have those user text, I can simply output them. So I could do now text statuses dot append, and I'm just gonna append string format, right? And I'm gonna say let's do a percent s. Let's do on a new line, right? Percent s column space percent s, and it's gonna be user and text, right? So we're just appending it to the output. So I'm gonna loop through all the available records. For each record, I'm gonna extract the user value, the text value. I'm gonna craft it into a one-liner and output it to the output. Right? This is a first iteration, quick and dirty. Run it just to see if it works. Starting. Okay, let's see. So if I go menu, timeline. Whoa, I got nothing. Why is that?
Your service is not
Hmm?
server's running?
Well, it doesn't matter if the service is running, since we do have the data in the database.
Oh, I thought you meant.
Yeah. Oh, have I? That's a good question. Have I dumped it? No, I have. Yeah, I have data. I have data. Okay. Invalid statement. Okay, so I have no idea why it's not working. So let's do. I'm gonna log. Whenever you don't have idea, you just log it, right? I'm gonna actually print the same thing here to a log, just to see what we're getting, to see if we have a organize imports to import log. Define a tag like I always do. Private static final string. Tag is timeline activity dot class dot get simple name, right? So I have the tag now. Tag it here. I could check after we got cursor. I could say log d tag comma got cursor with records and records, and I can do cursor dot get count, which returns the number of rows in the cursor, right? So I can find out how much data we got. Okay. Okay, that gives me enough to start with. So I'm gonna run it, and I'm gonna watch the logcat. It's a beautiful place to watch. Okay, so there's my timeline activity. Bam, go to timeline. All right, got cursor with 0 records. Okay, so the problem is not with my timeline activity. All right, moving on. Where do I go next? Status data. Why is this giving us 0, 0? One, two, three, four, five, six, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. What's that?
You need that descent right after the create.
Descent, this?
You need that descent. The create and you need compare the code you have. I don't see the descent.
Descent?
The original source code. I don't see the descent.
Oh, descent, like, I mean, this you're talking about? No, that's fine. That's fine. There is something that I'm forgetting. This is, I don't know why this is done the way it is. It took me a while to figure it out, actually.
You see, because you get the data only when you create the timeline.
That's fine. So you're talking about life cycle of the activity, right? So you're referring to the fact that I'm doing everything in onCreate right now. I mean, this is not optimal, but I did this like as a C programmer. Like I just dumped it all in one method, one long like just do it
I
here.
have the same code. I can
You can't.
yes, I did. I get it.
Okay, because you forgot to do something, not because of this. Well, you forgot to close your database. That's why. Not for you. Here's the problem.
Oh, you lost the results set because you closed the data.
Yes, the moment I do this, garbage collector actually cleans the data. I forgot about that. So, and I remember when I first time didn't know this. It took me a long time to figure it out. Okay.
I explicitly called query and query
Yeah.
internally.
Menu, timeline. Yeah, so I got rid of db.close. I can also shorten this now to return.
Did you have a db.close under query?
Yes, I did. You guys forgot it, right? That's why it worked for you, right?
No, I didn't.
You didn't, but
I forgot it too.
okay. So yeah, which is okay because in this case it's a readable database. Okay.
You should just keep the same connection? Or no?
It's not so much about the connection in this case. When it's a readable database, it's not open up or it's a read only doesn't get a close. You don't need to close it. So yeah, so this will say return by writable unless the same promise such as a full disk requires the blah blah. If the promise is future call to give it may read only database. See, a database object valid until db get writable database or close is called, right? So we can leave it open because it's okay. It's a read only database. There's no lock. There's no exclusivity to it. So that's fine.
You can add a finally method.
In where?
You can add a finally method.
Like finding method.
Try finally and just close the database.
Oh, you mean when I'm reading it?
After you do it.
You don't want
The
to.
problem is if you would close it anytime before you return, isn't that data is
Right, but if it fails, your point is if it fails, right?
Just enclose the return DB query with try finally block and you can close the DB.
So, okay, so surround with try finally. So this is going to be finally. Yes, so this will be proper, and then I would return what in this case?
You can just close it.
So db.close, okay, and we should probably, yeah, that's fine. So that would be more proper. That's because this could potentially die. That's what you're saying, right? Yeah, this would be more proper. So in case that it dies, we're explicitly closing the database. Right.
Even if it doesn't die, you will close it.
But we don't want that.
After you return it, you will close it.
Yeah, after we return it. So as long as the data is copied. So let's test that. But before I test that, one of the things is why is it not printing on a new line?
Actually, I'm just seeing like one thing on the timeline screen. Just one or two messages. I don't know if it's extending or dropping.
Uh, you're seeing just one, huh?
I'm seeing two entries, just one
Means
line.
I'm getting, when I log, I get 20 records, but when I print out, I get 2. But then again, I'm using the cursor and that's under this view, so.
So let's try this as opposed to move to next. What can I do? Let me run it. So menu timeline. Okay, so this time no. So this finally is not working for me in this case. Let me do this. Let me test first that this is actually working. So because I think it's still closing it and it's releasing that object. So many timeline. Yeah, so I'm getting, well, I'm not sure if it's formatted.
Yeah, I'm getting it like this.
Yeah, because it looks to me that it's actually getting all of them, but they're just running like this in one line. So they're, so it's not maybe not be acknowledging my new line or something.
Well, in your case though, you're in a loop setting the same text to, you know, you're doing it on loop of the same text controller. You're not appending or anything, right? Or creating a new text controller. So it doesn't keep adding new text views then, I'm saying. I think that's what I think. Right?
Well, I'm doing text as is append, so I'm appending it.
Is your
So I think this one could be the same thing.
is your text view field parent? Does that really matter?
My text view should be field parent.
So text view that append.
Because you're right, it might be just going off the.
Yeah, yeah. It looks like it's blowing up. Just going. So it looks like it's just going off.
Sideways. So if you put it in, wrap it in a layout with vertical orientation, would that make it go straight down instead of going sideways?
Well, but it shouldn't matter. It's just a piece of text. Should it matter? So let me see if I just have a piece of.
What is your type? Your text status?
So let me take a look. So if I have, I'm gonna check that by typing some text here in text, right? So I'm gonna go and type in some text. Right, so that it appears there. No, it doesn't acknowledge that. Does it have to do with the type that I have?
What if you set the text box to multi-line?
It's not about, yeah, it's not that. I have a suspicion that has to do with something I have in style.
Yeah.
I don't have it in style.
I have the same style sheet as you.
Let me try this. Oops. I have a suspicion about something. Come on. So menu, timeline. There we go. Okay, so the problem was with a style sheet. In style sheet, I had this setting for input type to autocorrect and autocomplete. And that yanked out my new lines. So I actually had all the data, but it was just printing in one line, and it was just going off forever, right? So I'm going to take that out of the style sheet for now, because that was just not necessary anyhow. And I was kind of using the style sheet for what it wasn't really meant for in this case. I was using another style sheet. So anyway, so that solves that problem. So that works there. And I was able to verify that because I saw the output here. I was like, hey, everything is printed properly. There's my data. I know I'm getting the data. I know I'm looping over the data, right? So that's why I like my logcat. So that there it is. Everything is in there. Okay. So now a couple of things that I wanted to do next is. So did you guys get it? You got it? Okay, you got it too. Okay. So now one thing that we don't do. Well, let's talk a little bit first about the I'll talk about the cursor lifecycle later. Remind me about that. Now, what's the problem with this layout?
Not scrolling.
It's not scrolling. So how do you scroll it? Yeah, so there's something called scroll view. So scroll view is basically something that allows you to infinitely, it's infinitely scrollable. You can put any big element into it, and it's gonna automatically figure out how to scroll it. The only catch with scroll view is that it can only have one something inside of it. But that something can be complex. It doesn't have to be, it just needs to be one element, but that element could be an entire complicated view. That make sense? So yeah, one object, one view. So I can put two views. I can put two views into another view and then put that other view into it, right? So that's how it
So
works.
you can put a layout in the scroll.
Exactly, you can put a layout, yes.
You cannot put like text view 1 and text view 2.
Exactly. You can merge text view and text view 2 into one element and then put it in. Right. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna open up the timeline XML and we're gonna wrap. So this is where it's hard to do it via this tool. So from this tool, I don't know if they fixed it, but if I grab the scroll view, I don't know how it really. I don't know what it does really like this. So I usually do this from XML. So just for the second text box, I would simply do control space scroll view. Oops. Scroll space scroll view, right? And scroll view needs width and height. So I would say Android layout width. Fill parent and Android layout height. I can copy that actually from the status, that's fine. Right, and then you just want to surround your text view with that, and then you don't want to reformat it. So layout width is gonna be what's that? You're gonna put a weight. Oh, okay. Layout width. Thank you. Right. So basically, it's scroll view wrapping text view. Huh. Yes, you can. Hold on. Let me just fix something. Not in the button, but in the footpath. So if I rerun this, let's see what we get. Let me change the orientation. Control F11. See, now it's scrollable, right? Let me see what happens if I just apply the style on the scroll view and on this guy. Try this. So less typing. Just apply that style. Because right now my dimensions are slightly messed up.
The scroll down asset is not appearing. Like I don't see a.
Yeah, it may be appearing only when it's needed.
What did you do to remove that when it was coming in one single line? That was in a style, right?
Yeah, in the style I had defined some input type for the button. That was the bottom of the edit box. So I removed that. There was an input type that was specifying auto correct. Yeah, so I removed that whole line.
So what's the thing to swap it around? F11, what?
Control F11. Yes. And this is not really applicable working this way. So I'm gonna say I'm gonna basically say just fix the look and feel a little bit. Android layout width. Then Android layout height. Just changing the look and feel a little bit because I have applying the same style to both is not gonna really do it because they're children of each other, so that style doesn't work. So I just change it for text view to have no style, right? Just defining what it is. So we'll find out if it works. Menu, timeline. Okay, so that's a little nicer.
So, you wanted that border there?
What's that?
What did you change it?
I just changed, I applied the style to the scroll view, but then on the text view I just said layout fill parent, fill parent. That's it. Again, it's just, you can go many ways, right? You can,
Can you maximize this font size?
okay. Okay, so we got it all working, so it looks like that, it's scrollable, right? You can see the list of friends. It's all working, so just to kind of review what we did is we created the new timeline activity, XML first, right? So it's relatively simple. I have a linear layout, which has a title, no big deal about title, right? We've done it before. And then it's got the output, which is just text, but we have the text in a scroll view so that it's scrollable intelligently when it's needed, right? And then in Java, what we did is in onCreate, we load up the XML, we inflate it, we find our view that we care about, we then get a cursor, figure out the column data after we get a cursor, and then what we do is we loop over all the elements and print it out to the screen, and both to the screen and to the log file, right? So that's basically what we did, our output. Now, one thing that we should also do is we should clean up after we're done with the cursor. So we should basically call, dispose of cursor when we are done with it, when we don't need it anymore. Okay. So we could do that in what method would you do that? Basically undo this cursor.
Or destroy or something.
Yeah, you could do it in onDestroy. So we could create onDestroy as the opposite of onCreate. However, there's a utility function that makes it easier. It's called start managing cursor. and you can just give it the name of the cursor, and it basically what that does is it has the activity start managing the life cycle of the cursor. So as the activity is starting running display, gone, it knows to call cursors, this and cursor that. So that's just another rule, something.
Activity came from activity?
Yeah, so start managing cursor is property of the activity. Yeah. So method allows the activity to take care of managing the given cursor's lifecycle for you based on the activity's lifecycle.
It's strange that the cursor class itself comes under Android or database,
I know.
but start managing cursor comes under
Well,
Android activity.
Yeah, no, because start managing cursor is part of the Android activity because start managing cursor is manages the cursor by activity's lifecycle. Okay, so you guys got it so far. Everything makes sense. How this, and you got something that looks reasonably okay, right? So you can now see the data as well. Cool. Okay.